Okay, welcome. So this is the second video for the midterm exam, LEH 353, frenemies. And so the first video focuses on the instructions to the exam. And the second video here is going to focus on the questions, right? So one issue with the original videos that made previous semesters, and so I just want to talk about a few little tweaks that are made, and also to emphasize some of those instructions in terms of what I'm expecting in the exam and the grading rubric, right? It's just some things I want to refresh on. So there's three things we're going to do very quickly in this interview. I'm going to start just looking at the folder for the midterm exam this semester in our Blackboard setup very quickly. And then we'll turn to just a couple issues dealing with the instructions, emphasizing certain things. And then we'll turn to the questions. And the primary focus of this video is to really clarify what I'm asking you with these questions and kind of what the kind of answer that I'm looking for. Right? All right. So let's get going. All right. So you go down past week 9, friendship part 2. And then you see the midterm exam. So let's click on that. Let's hope we haven't timed out here. Oh, that's awesome. So there's the exam. Rules for writing. I've given you this. This really just emphasizes rules essential to good writing. Good writing is hard to achieve, but it is not a mystery. And there's really two main things that go into good writing. Number one is that clear thinking leads to clear writing. Clear thinking leads to clear writing. If you're not clear on what your thought is, you're going to have a tough time expressing it, right? Just hands down. And as you write, it's a spontaneous process. What you think at the beginning may not be what you think once you get into the writing. So your ideas get clarified and they crystallize, they solidify over time. Right? So it's really important to edit, right? So editing is really the process, not just of correcting grammar, not just of correcting spelling mistakes, but really honing in on what you actually do want to say as it comes to you more and more clearly. You read your sentence and you say to yourself, is this what I mean? Question, what do I mean? What am I actually saying here? I wrote this yesterday and now I come back to it and I really don't know what I'm saying. Right? Or that's not exactly what I thought, or guess what? I've changed my mind. So clarity in writing begins with clarity of thinking, and clarity of thinking starts with a strong as understanding of the text as you can have, right? And then an understanding of the question, specific question being asked, and then your own thoughts. Second part is just organization, right? All of these, I've talked about an essay format. And what I mean by that is simply that the question demands you answer with a kind of thesis or hypothesis about what you think the answer is. And a hypothesis is a kind of general claim that then is fleshed out with evidence from the text and your own reasoning from that evidence, right? And part of that presentation is a logical flow of ideas. So not just clear ideas, but ideas that unfold in a logical and coherent manner. And the more you proofread, because the essence of writing is proofreading, I think, and revising. But you can't revise until you've read it and realize that there's something that needs to be changed. You'll start to see that things kind of flow, or can flow in a kind of logical, orderly fashion. Right? So here's the actual Turnitin assignment right here, which means you want to have your exam done on a PDF format or a Word document, right? Do not use some odd, unusual format because it will have problems uploading, and the system needs to be able to read what you put up there, right? And so that's pretty straightforward. You go in there and you put in the title, midterm exam, and then, or maybe it's already provided. I don't remember what it looks like from the student point of view, but you upload the thing, and it lets you know you've uploaded it. And of course, if the due date is October 31st by midnight. So if you have not turned in your exam by that time, you will not be able to upload. Other issues. Let's say you upload and you made a mistake, or you uploaded incompletely. Remember, you can only upload one document. You need both questions, all the exam on one document. Don't split it up in two, because you'll upload the first and then the second one won't be taken, because it will only take one. So make sure you put everything on one document. And here are the instructions. All pretty clear, simple stuff. So let's turn to the prompts and the questions provided by the Word document right here. Let's see if I can get my computer to comply. Got a lot of stuff open right now. So here's the due date. Just, please use 12 font. Don't change the font. 1.5 spaced. It's not a typical spacing that professors ask for, but I find it most convenient in terms of reading, and also in terms of the amount I want you to write. It's based on that 1.5 spacing. So you're going to write 1.5 pages for each question. 1.5 pages for each question. There are 2 questions. Times 1.5 equals minimum 3, right? So the key thing here is 1.5 pages is minimum. Minimum. And that should be easy to write if you're spending the proper time to write this exam. More is not necessarily better, but if you want to write up to 2 pages, you can. But big thing, I've got it down here, number 16, length is no proof of a good answer. The key is to answer these questions as directly as possible, bearing in mind the claims you make and then supporting them, reasoning, critical thinking skills, and so on, right? So if you've just written a lot and it doesn't necessarily pertain to the question, it's not relevant. It's not within the scope of the question. It shouldn't be in the answer, right? So that's what I call filler, right? So if you write 3 pages for each answer, number 1, you've done too much. Number 2, is everything you've written actually relevant to the question? There are many true statements one could make about these texts. There's many brilliant interpretations one could make about these texts. The point is what you're saying having to do with what is actually asked of you? And it's really important that you stay on task with what's being asked, because that's what I'm looking for in the grading. The other element is, I don't want you to go over 2 pages, because I'm asking you to answer as fully and as completely as you can within the boundaries of 2 pages. There's a certain limit there. It's a kind of a writing boundary that I'm expecting you to try to achieve the most focused answer within that space without having to use more space. And I think actually if one has some knack for writing, that it's always easier to write more than less. If you've ever had to write like a kind of a newspaper article or something like that, where it's like 800 words, 1,000 words, you realize that 800, 1,000 words is not many, and that there's so much you could say, but then you have to find a way to compress it all and to make judgments about what's really important and what's not. And that space limit does that for you. Last couple things about the instructions. You absolutely must cite from the text for all parts of your answers when appropriate. There should be several citations for each answer, right? And couple really important things. Do you quote or paraphrase, right? That depends. I talked about in the previous video. It depends on the purpose of what you're trying to say. When you quote, you should interpret or paraphrase what that quotation is, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, where do we want to go from here? So, citing from the text is absolutely important. I'm asking you to use parenthetical notation, where you just provide the author's name within the parentheses, comma, and then the page number, right? Very, very simple technique, and you put this at the end of the sentence, but before the period, right? Last big instructional issue, and this is really important, in the bold here at 19. Under no circumstances are you to use secondary sources, whether books or online resources, other than those I have provided. right? There is to be no use of secondary sources because this, well, the big reason is this is not a research paper. These are questions that are asking you to do critical thinking about the text and what's in it, right? So I want to know your thinking rather than what someone else has written, right? And of course, so you should not be citing anything at all other than the text provided you, number one. Number two, plagiarism, number 21. Number two, number 21. Plagiarism is strictly forbidden. So if you cut and paste things from the internet, that's violating actually two rules. Number one, you're not supposed to be using secondary sources. And number two, claiming that writing is yours when in fact it's not is called plagiarism, and it's strictly forbidden and will result in a failing grade. Okay, so Sapiens. I give you kind of like an introduction to the parameters of the questions, A through E. In Sapiens, the author argues that at the center of human relationships and community is language and the ideas it allows us to communicate. Language and ideas are part of the realm of human culture which are made possible by the cognitive revolution. First, what is the cognitive revolution and how did it give rise to language and symbolic thinking? Which means, so you're going to have to talk about the cognitive revolution, you're going to have to make some reference to what human language is, and some reference to symbolic thinking. Now, the author in Sapiens certainly touches on basic facts about the cognitive revolution. He talks something about the uniqueness of human language and symbolic thinking. But I've also given you some kind of supplementary information in the slides and videos that you can find posted with the content of the week for Sapiens. What distinguishes human language and our ability to think symbolically from other animals and their ability to communicate with sounds? So this is really an extension of discussion of what human language and symbolic thinking really are. So let's be clear. The use of human language is a form of symbolic thinking. Language is symbolic, and that means in a sense, it's a certain type of symbol. C. What are the two central functions of language as described by the author of Sapiens? And so in the videos, in the PowerPoints, and in class, we've focused in very clearly on the two functions or the two main categories of language. How do these two functions help create two different types of communities and explain the two different types of communities? So the big thing is that these two different types of language allowed for the formation and the solidification and even existence of two vastly different types of human community because of the ability to communicate and also what the type of information that they communicated about helped to solidify group solidarity and group identity. Group solidarity and group identity. Lastly, what does the author mean by an imagined order? And how does this concept relate to the functions of language? Provide an example from the text to illustrate what an imagined order is. Explain this example, including why it is an example of an imagined order. Okay, so the key thing here is, what is an imagined order? What's its relationship with language and the functions that are asked about in the previous sections? And provide an example from the text itself and explain a little bit about, for example, why is this an imagined order? What makes it an imagined order once you've established the definition of it, right? Okay, so let's move on. So Aristotle's Ethics says books in 8 and 9. I will say that this really the emphasis here is on book 8, particularly in the 3 forms of friendship. But let's be clear, that's not all that's asked. So first, explain generally what Aristotle has in mind by friendship. The Greek word for it is philia. What does it mean? What kinds of relationships does he include? And so let me be really clear about this question. I'm not here asking about the three forms that he will go on. Those are generic categories of relationships based on the particular object of exchange. Throughout Book 8, primarily, particularly at the beginning, he talks about a whole variety of different types of real-world relations. Mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, kings and subjects, masters and slaves, all kinds of relationships that he describes at least potentially being friendships. He raises the question about some. Can these type of people be friends with one another? So they're really concrete examples, whereas the three types of friendship are generic categories. And specifically, they're categories based on the nature of the exchange, which could include any number of real-world relationships, mothers, fathers, parents, and so on and so forth. B, what are the preconditions of any form of friendship? Now, this language of preconditions is my language, just to be clear. He doesn't use this word in the text, but I've talked about it in class. I've talked about it. It's on display in the PowerPoints, and it's on display in the videos, right? Preconditions, what does that mean? Things you need to have in place for there to be the possibility of a relationship at all. We're not talking about a good, bad relationship, just the very possibility. These things are required. What are they? Then explain the three types of friendship, including the following characteristics. Issues of the good or object exchange, whether the friend is treating it as a means or an end, a true friend or not, the degree of completeness or incompleteness, issues of duration or time, how long they last, and issues of equality, inequality, likeness, and unlikeness or dislikeness. So these are all things that he talks about in detail. He doesn't spell out every last one of them in relationship to every one of the three, but you can figure out which is which. And I've also provided you with a chart that really explains all this and illustrates it. We've gone over it in class as well. What does it mean that a true friend is treated as an end in themselves, whereas someone less than a true friend might be merely treated as a means? So this starts out by clarifying what an end is and what a means is. What is an end and what is a means, and then what does it mean to treat someone as an end compared to what does it mean to treat them as a means? What makes complete friendship complete? This raises the question of what does it mean to be complete? What does it mean to be complete? So complete friendship, on one hand, is just the name for true friendship. On the other hand, why is complete friendship considered complete? And what does Aristotle mean about this concept? And this word complete comes from the word telos, meaning end or goal, right? And a complete friendship is one that seems to fulfill the goals, and human beings reach a state of completion, or we might use the word perfection. So I'm not asking you what complete friendship is. I'm asking you why complete friendship is considered complete. Okay, last part. What is the relationship between friendship and happiness? How does friendship make happiness possible? Will all three types of friendship produce happiness? If not, which one and why? Right? So this goes back to our opening discussion of Aristotle's conception of happiness, ethics. We're reading the Nicomachean Ethics. Ethics is, in a sense, the science of individual human happiness. And if a discussion of friendship is found in a book, which is the science of happiness, it would seem obvious that there's a vital connection between friendship and happiness. And the general question is, what is it? And I think that starts with an understanding of how does Aristotle define happiness? And then a consideration of how friendship contributes or produces happiness. Now let's be clear, we're not asking your opinion here, we're asking what Aristotle says about this. And well, let's just say he doesn't always spell it out. It's your discernment of what you think the relationship is to some extent. Will all three forms of friendship produce happiness? And if not, which one and why? Okay. The question kind of implies partially the answer there. So, why is it that the one friendship produces happiness? Why is it the other ones don't produce it? That needs to be clarified. Okay. So with that, good luck on the exam. And if you have any questions, either I will see you next week that is Wednesday the 27, is it? And or you can send me an email and get in touch about any question you may have, and I will be happy to answer it. Obviously, the sooner you can take in this information and ask me questions, the sooner I can get back to you, so the more valuable it can be in finishing your exam. Okay, great. Good luck. Thank you very much.